Okay, I am doing a project called All About My Mother, and as the name would suggest, I am doing a video interview all about my mother, a woman who has greatly shaped the man I am today. So let's just start off with something simple like, what's your name?
Kim Clopin,
Where are you from?
Jersey City, New Jersey. I was born and raised.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about yourself, like, what do you like, what do you dislike?
Well, first I believe you need to know some statistics. I am 53 almost on Christmas Eve, and I was raised Catholic. My mother is Italian, and my father, rest his soul, was Swedish. My maiden name is Bergman, like the actress Ingrid Bergman. That's how people always know of Ingrid when you're the old time people anyway. I don't know about the young kids nowadays.
I can guarantee you I don't.
Yeah, that's what I find a lot of times is that people in their 40s and 50s are making these comments about the past, and these young kids nowadays are like, what? And it's just, I never thought I'd see myself middle-aged woman, because I always thought even 40 as being very old when I was your age and even younger. So basically I was born downtown Jersey City, but was only there for 1 year, and then we moved to, it's called Country Village, which I stayed at until I married at the age of almost 28. And then we moved to Secaucus in an apartment for 3 years until we got the house that we currently live in Hasbrook Heights. We waited 6 years before having a child because I was not ready to have any children. And then when you came, you were my firstborn, and we waited a good 5 years to try for a second baby. And it took an additional 2 years for your brother to come. So there are 7 years between the two of you. And then I was like, would a third baby be a boy? I was like, I don't know if I can handle another boy. They are rough at a young age. But God blessed us with your sister Natalie Rose, who is currently 9 years old.
Okay, and how did you meet Dad?
At work.
And where was that?
We worked in the World Trade Center. And your brother had saved me from being there since on that day on 9/11, since he was just born August 31st. And I was 8 months pregnant when I left, and in a matter of 4 weeks is when those towers came down. So I could not imagine myself being 8 months or more pregnant, trying to get down those steps, and just seeing what my coworkers saw, and it still affects them today. So we met at work. He sat right in front of me, and we both had the same interest in music. We both liked the Sex Pistols. We liked punk rock. So how now he likes jazz, I don't know how that came about from punk rock to jazz, whereas now I went from punk rock to hip hop. And I can tell you I can dance well to it. People have asked me to teach them how to dance like that. And they said I'd make a good, what do they call it, Zumba hip-hop teacher.
Okay, and tell me about your childhood.
My mother, being an Italian, was very strict. And I had 2 older brothers and an older sister. My sister was so much older that she moved out and got married while I was still very young, in first grade. So I had 2 older brothers who were like 2 little fathers. My mother would not let me do much. There were kids that were younger than me that would be out, and she would send one of my brothers to come down the block to bring me in the house when younger people were able to stay out. And you could not convince brothers to let you stay because they would embarrass you if you told them otherwise. My father was very happy-go-lucky. Nothing bothered him. My mother would pick on him to no end, that he was always sleeping, but yet he had 2 jobs. So he was tired, of course. But it was hard for her, too, raising 4 kids, and she stayed home, and I guess she felt like she had no social life. And it was just very hard raising 4 kids with your husband working 2 jobs. But back then, the females did not work like they do now. But I think she would have been better off having some sort of social life, career outside of raising 4 kids that were pretty much a handful.
Now, as a woman, do you feel that you had to really work to get to where you are today?
I feel like I should be higher or in a better job than I am now. But my problem was I get very nervous on interviews. I take on a lot of work and I don't complain. Whereas other people act like they walk on water with the little bit that they do, and they tell me I should do the same. But then if I make an error, which everyone does, then I kick myself and say, see, I don't deserve a promotion because I messed up. Currently, I'm trying to get a new credit card system in place, and they gave us like 3 weeks to do so because the new company just came on board, and I don't even know the system myself, so it's very hard to explain to other people how to do it if I'm not sure myself. And then coming home after work and trying to help your siblings with their homework. Your father and I, he's doing the math, I'm doing the English. It's really a lot, and it's been very stressful this month of September.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about being a mother?
It's the best thing that ever could have happened. I always wanted to have children. I knew my mother was a good mother and my father was a great father. But I have a combination of the two of them. I could be very easygoing like my father or get very agitated like my mother. But I believe in what I would have done different was had my children do their homework more on their own. My husband is more impatient, and he would try to explain to them and he would get mad and start yelling, and then they would come to me, and rather than show them, I would do it for them. So I would change that. I would not do it for them, but try to show them and then have them do it after my example. But limited is time, so I would do it because it would be 10 o'clock at night and I'd still be at the books with the homework. So that's what I would change, is making them do their homework more on their own than me do it for them, and maybe also not interfering when their father was trying to show them, instead of saying, oh, leave them alone, and then sending him away, and then me sitting and doing it. So it would be more of a balance.
If you could make a more profound change, say outside the family life, say if you could start all over again, would you do anything differently, or are you content with where you are right now?
I would have had my own apartment. My mother would not allow me, believe it or not, in my 20s to move out. I had a girl I work with. She wanted to get an apartment, and my mother was like, absolutely not. And my sister to this day is like, how could you have listened in your 20s saying, with a full-time job, and with your mother telling you, no, you can't get an apartment? I definitely would have done, with no disrespect to her, but I would have had a talk with her, and I believe that would have matured me more and made me more responsible, because with going from living at home to getting married was the only way I could have got out on my own, was to get married. And I felt like I wasn't ready to get married, even though I was in my late 20s. I just was a late bloomer since I had such a protective mother. And I felt like if I had my own apartment, I would have matured more and been more responsible and just been different with the way I even, deal with people at work, and not being so shy and backwards and feel like I don't deserve things.
Okay. Well, okay. So, given everything that's happened the way it had, would you still have followed through with Dad, given that he doesn't really have much of a role in the family life?
I would say yes, because he's loyal and dependable. And he is a Taurus, whereas I am a Capricorn, and those two signs are perfectly compatible. He's not a drinker. He's not a stay out. He doesn't go to the bars, which you find in many marriages. The husband is never home. All right, granted, he does stay in the basement a lot, but he's just a very quiet man. And even you said that you have to drag out the conversation. Once you engage him in conversation, he is really opens up and relaxes and is very witty, which you get your wit and humor from. So I would say yes, because he was a good father, that he was there for you. He does help you with your homework and the math that I have trouble with. I don't know what I would do. You know, I had a tutor for you, remember? Spent a lot of money for geometry and algebra.
Yeah,
and it's just hard to teach somebody that. So he's helpful in that area. And when the going gets rough, like when we would be upset, he is really very, very heartfelt. You wouldn't think he would be so compassionate in that way. But when my father was dying, he actually stayed with him and held his hand. And my brother asked him to be his daughter's godfather because of that. Because I was pregnant with you, and my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, was pregnant with his child. So he actually stayed with my father and brother. So he really does have good loyalties in that way. And I always had a feeling that my father would die while I was pregnant. I don't know how I knew that. That's why I believe I delayed getting pregnant, because I knew I would lose him, and I did. But I still feel like he guides my children somehow.
Well, I mean, that's not to undermine or undercut the effect you've had on my upbringing personally. And I think we've got about a good interview right here. And thank you very much. You've been a lovely assistant. Thank you very much. And there you have it. This is the woman who has ultimately shaped the man I am today. Thank you. Have a good night.